Welcome everyone back to Masters of Data. I'm Adam White. I have with me Zoe Hawkins and Cass Mooseburger. Cass, great to have you back on the podcast.
Happy to
You're
be back.
stuck with us. We're just going to keep bringing you back because it's so much fun.
Best folks to get stuck with.
Love it.
We love to hear it. We love to hear it. So today we are talking about kind of a beginner's guide to audit. And audit is one of those words that has like historically made my skin crawl a little bit, like it
Makes sense.
feels like I'm in trouble, like the IRS is gonna bang on my front door, that's the connotation. But in GRC, that's not really the case. I mean, audit is not a bad word. It's just
Yep.
a Tuesday,
Yep.
oftentimes, right? That happens. So kind of talk about audit from your perspective and like your perception versus kind of like what I just described.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. It is just a Tuesday for us. It is why we have jobs, in my opinion. At least it's why I have a job. It's essential to what we do, but I do understand how other stakeholders would see it from another lens. I guarantee if I asked my IT or engineering or SOC friends, they'd say, "No, it's audit season again." Like the gifts that come out of audit season are hilarious when I open the channel. They're like, no, don't pull me in it. Don't pull me in. But it's something that has to be a part of that everyday life. And the more we structure into ensuring that it's a continuous compliance piece of it, a frame of mind, the little bit easier it makes it a little less anxious inducing. GRC and audits themselves can become.
I love this image that I now have because Adam was like
Name
the
touch.
IRS knock knock knocking, but instead you're
Just
the
tax.
one. You are the knock knock knocker on the engineering and IT
Yeah.
door, being like, "Hey guys, it's
I'll
audit
have to send you guys.
season.
There's a
You need to
GIF.
have the
There is a
Breaking
GIF of
Bad, like
tax.
I am the one who
I'm the
knocks,
one who knocks."
cast.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah,
Cass.
literally. There is one of me internally. I'll have to send you guys it.
Oh, I
That
love
they
it.
created because it's literally I think it's a Bitmoji of me being like, it's audit season. It's pretty funny, but
Oh, I love it. I do love a custom Slack emoji or custom GIF. Those make me laugh. But I mean, I guess the point here is like you're signing up for an audit. Like
always.
that to me, like literally, I'm like Adam. I'm like filed my taxes and all I'm doing is
Mhm.
waiting to not hear anything
Yep.
else. Like I don't want to hear anything else from the IRS. But you are like, ooh, what are the new certs and things that
Yep.
I could go for? Like who else could audit me
Yep.
in a way? So kind of talk about like that piece. Like, are you literally like, do I have a gap in my calendar? Who else can I squeeze in for an audit? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I promise I'm not looking for more opportunities to get audited. I will say it is a central piece of my job, but it is by far not my favorite. That being said, I would say a lot of us have, I'll speak towards Sumo and how it looks for us. We have a calendar, just like everybody else. We have a typical season that is our audit season. So for us, it's kind of the back half of the year. It depends on what reports, certifications, attestations that you do carry. Um, I will say if we want to be like, oh yeah, I want to bring in more. I want to do more. I would say it's not always us driven. It can be, but it kind of just depends on what the market is looking like. A lot of that comes from, okay, how do we help Sumo win more deals? How do we be competitive in this market? How do we show and prove that we can be trusted with our customers' data? And is there something else that we need to be going after to ensure that we can show our customers that level of trust in us as a company, right? So for us, it comes down to, okay, what does our season already look like? And is there something that strategically makes sense for us to go after from where's our product moving? What are our customers asking for? What problems can we help solve for those customers by going after something else? Is there another market we want to push into? So like a FedRAMP high kind of market versus a FedRAMP moderate market, and kind of looking at it in that way. So a lot of times it's just general maintenance of like, okay, we already have these frameworks that we follow. Maintain, maintain, maintain. Is there continuous improvement? Is there places we can harden some of our controls? Is there places that we can harden some of our security practices? And then is that other edge case of we don't do it every year, I promise, because that's tough and we're a small agile team over here. But is there things that make sense for us to go after to kind of cut through other noise within the market?
And
Nice.
you used a bunch of words that I have gotten in trouble for using. So I always say on this podcast, like words matter and all of
The
that.
semantics matter for
The
sure.
semantics matter,
Yes.
maybe not always, but like
Yep.
I'll be like certified compliant, and people are like,
Yep.
you can't say that. And I'm like, but what, why? What can I say? And so, you know, should I be getting in trouble if I say we're certified versus attested, attestation? I don't know
Yep.
what the verb would be there.
Yep.
Versus, I don't know, like just
We have a report.
reported on. Like,
Yeah.
what does that mean?
Yeah.
From like a did do all of those come with audits? Like,
Yeah.
what does that kind of look like in your world?
Yeah, so I think, and you're absolutely right, the semantics do matter. And I think the longer you do it and the more you practice it, it's kind of like somebody saying your name wrong. I think for a while it doesn't really bother you because you're like, it's no big deal. I don't interact with these people all the time. But I think a lot of times it does get a bad rap when it's like, oh, they're consistently saying that they're doing an ISO report or something else of the nature, and it's just not the right um, naming conventions that should get tied to each of those frameworks because there are different outputs. So obviously a certification, you have that official stamp of approval. So like I have an ISO certificate, which is just literally a certificate like you get from you made the best pie and they print it off and it's one
Oh
piece
my
of
gosh, could
paper.
you frame it and put it on your wall? Like that kind of
Probably.
certificate?
Probably. I think a lot of people do. I think some of the other reports you might be able to do that for as well. And then you have an attestation, which is like that auditor's opinion on that evidence. So if we have a report pushed out and it has pieces and then the auditor's opinion. So like the front of our SOC 2 report has an auditor's opinion. Technically we could say that that's a report, but because there's an auditor's opinion, we could also call it an attestation of sorts because that piece of it is that auditor's opinion. And then you do have the report, which is the actual evidence and details. So a SOC 2 type 2 report has that evidence details and then that auditor's opinion. Same thing with PCI. There is a report on compliance, but there's also an AOC, which is an attestation of compliance, which again is that small framing version of, okay, we have that. So there are different ways that you can use it in different contexts for different frameworks. But it's kind of, it gets interesting the more and more you carry because you have to be very deliberate about what words you use. And because we have a complex or a deeper stack here, I think I even sometimes say it wrong, and it's what I do for a living. So I think there are right ways to do it, and I think it's just poking against those professionals of like, hey, what is the right way to do it, and how do I approach it most frequently from a correct
Yeah.
perspective?
The certificate is what you put on your wall. The attestation is what the auditor puts on their wall. Like,
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah. That's like their framed screenshot or
Like, I
whatever.
have this opinion and I say so.
Yeah.
I love it though, because like we'll put those logos or those things and be like, we are certified, attested, like check out our certifications and attestations
Yep.
and reports. And it's just one of those things where I'm like, we have so many, but there's no like collective word that
Yeah.
feels really
Yeah.
great about it, you know?
Right? I mean, you could think about it from like a layering perspective, right? So like a certificate is like you're on the surface layer. You're just thinking it at the very top layer. You're not giving them too much details. There isn't too much nitty-gritty that they get into. And then attestation is kind of, okay, they have that opinion, they have that conclusion of like, yes, they are compliant against all these controls. I'm showing you green circles of compliance, 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 like they've nailed it. It gives you some insight into what was looked at during that audit, but not everything. And then that report is like that deepest layer of like, okay, this is the control, this is how we looked at it, this is what we looked for, and we're showing that they are compliant with these things or that it wasn't tested because there weren't examples that happened within the reporting period or otherwise. So it's kind of like that low, medium, high from an information perspective.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Nice.
super helpful.
So, Cass, when an audit is scheduled, and presumably you've got some calendar of audits,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, what do you do? I mean, obviously not freak out immediately because you're a pro,
Don't panic.
but don't
Seasoned
panic.
professionals over here.
Right. But what does that kind of look like? Are
Yep.
there, is there a time period that you give yourself to get ready for an audit? Are you kind of always, building your case kind of
Ooh, you
up
don't
to
have to
that
get ready
time,
if you stay
like that's
ready.
right. Yeah, exactly.
That's
Always
what you
prepared.
Yeah, that's what you hope for. You hope that we're always prepared. I think it depends on who it is. Again, I swear I'm gonna stop saying that eventually on this podcast of like, it just depends, just like everybody always says. I would say depending on your time frame, you're always wanting to test against it of like it's continuous compliance, right? So you're doing SOC 2 Type 2, right? It's a look back report. You're looking against a previous year of compliance. So the report we published in March of this year, it was looking at all of 2025. It's calendar year for us, and it's different for everybody. So they could have 9 month reports, they could have other timelines. Ours is a full year, so it's Jan 1 to December 31 of 2025 for that report. So for us, it's okay, they're looking at say changes we've implemented within our product, they're pulling a sampling or an initial population, which is just a subset of data. They're pulling that against that entire time frame, and then they're sampling a certain amount, a certain percentage of number from that general population to say, have you consistently done this control against this time window? So for us, it's saying, yes, we want to be continuously doing it. So we hope for that so we don't have to panic. So when I'm prepping for an audit, I frame it of, okay, when is that audit week kicking off? So you can collect some audits are different than others. So you can collect evidence prior to going into the audit. So you give them policies, you can give them some of the documentation, you can give them some of the other pieces of evidence. Some of them are time-based, so you're going to have to wait and pull them to later in the period to where you can capture more of the time. But basically, when it comes down to it, you want to say, okay, I've got an audit coming up in, say, September 1st, and that's when my live interviews are going to happen. Probably somewhere in the early July timeframe, I would be kicking off what we call prep hours. So we, on a weekly basis, sometimes it's bi-weekly, depends on how many stakeholders are new within our company. We'll kick off office hours and say, hey, invite everybody and their brother, put a couple time zones on there to make sure that we're friendly to all of our friends across the world because we are a global business. Come ask questions. Let's walk through your controls. Let's walk through your documentation. Let's make sure all of the T's are crossed and your I's are dotted. Let's make sure everything's been approved. Let's make sure that documentation truly reflects the procedures you're running today to where when we get to that audit, everything's already been double checked. We already have pulled what we need to. The teams already know what the auditors are going to ask because we've told them this is the control selection, this is kind of what we're walking through, this is the processes. And then you're also thinking about making sure that you're planning it effectively. So when I schedule sessions, we do them differently for a federal audit than we do for a capstone, which covers the rest of our frameworks. We're working on consolidating, so hopefully it'll be nice to just do one audit a year rather than two really big ones. We make sure that we're scheduling those sessions on specific domains. So when we're talking about certain sets of controls, there's certain teams and departments that don't need to be on that. So we want to be most effective as we can with our key stakeholders' time. We know we're taking cycles from them building new features in our product, from them hardening other places in our internal operations. So we try to be cognizant of if I'm scheduling this session, everybody that's on that session should have a purpose. They should have a reason that they need to be there rather than, oh, I'm going to bring HR to maybe access control. 99% of that meeting, they're not going to have anything to say. So we try to structure those things to where we're effectively using people's time and saying, oh, that one or two control that's in this domain, let's table that, save that for later. And again, you have to good auditors and have good relationships there and make sure you're maintaining good process. But let's table that, talk to it. Tomorrow we have HR at 2 o'clock. We can bring this control back up. They'll walk you through their piece of it to where we're being most effective with everybody's time. So from a prep perspective, it comes down to how often have they been in an audit? And how prepared are we typically? Is it a new framework? Should we do more prep hours to kind of get us in the right place?
And does that pull in then, like, I know I scream at my computer every time it comes up when it's
Same.
like, oh, it's time for my training, like
Yep.
yet another. And I'm like, I swear I just did
Yep.
this. Like, I promise you I did. And then obviously I log in to the tool and I did not just do this.
Yep.
But I assume that's kind of the reporting that like maybe HR or IT is pulling in
Yep.
and being able to say, like, yes, we really do turn off access if people don't do their training.
Yep.
Like,
And they
yes,
ask for examples. So they're like, oh, you did that? Pull the sampling. Let's see. Did anybody not complete it within that window? If that returns 3 people, they're like, great, show me the procedure that you followed and that it was consistently followed for all 3 of those folks. It's different depending on the threshold, but they're using exactly those examples when people aren't doing what they're being notified about, or they'll say, show me that escalation email that I went to their manager when they haven't completed their trainings on
Oh
time.
my.
So like we'll literally pull it up and be like, oh, here's Joe Schmo. He didn't complete it on time. This is the email that got escalated to their manager. Subsequently, this is the ticket that got open to IT for them to cut access to everything but the training module in their email to where they knew that they needed to do that training module. So
You don't have to
it's
use Joe Schmo's name. You can just use mine, Cass.
You
It's
can just
fine.
say
Adam White,
Adam.
naughty list, didn't do his training.
Adam.
I'm sure you've done it. I'm sure you guys are all perfect champions of security and
We
compliance.
I
try.
will just
We
say that
try.
some of those training videos are
Oh
painful.
yeah,
I'm just
they're
gonna put it
very,
out there.
they
Like,
have to be, right? Like they have to train you on the stuff that is just, it's so dry, but it's so necessary. I mean, I wish there are some other vendors out there that are doing interesting things with spicing those up, but there's only so many interesting ways you can talk about export compliance. Like, I hate to say it, like there really aren't that many interesting ways you can go
yeah,
about
I
it.
did work at a company where we had like animated videos that we would watch every
Yep.
month. I don't know if that was better or worse. But then there was also a public
Yep.
shaming because that application had like who
There is a
watched the
danger layer.
video fast and like who got the test right
Yeah.
fast. And
A speed list
I
that you don't want to be on of like, I am lightning. No, you don't want to be lightning in
no,
this
no,
case.
no, I am very slow and steady. I am
Yep.
auditable. Yeah. No, I think that's super interesting, the idea that you have to bring in all these different teams. We've talked in the past about kind of pulling in all of the right stakeholders and all
Yep.
of that. Like, is this, I guess I think about it sometimes in the sense of like you have to build your social capital within an organization and
Oh
then
yeah.
you build it to spend it. Is this kind of when you spend your capital and be like, remember all those favors I did? Like now you need to
Yeah.
show up and help me on this audit kind of situation.
Yeah, and I think it's such a fun way to think about it. And I like the words you use for that. I probably will never regurgitate it that well. As well as you do. I think about it in the sense of like I try to make friends across the business, and I will say like there is some social capital. Like you're gonna get that. It's work, right? Like it's not just friendlies, unfortunately. Sometimes it can be, but I try to think about it in the sense of like, I want those teams to know that I'm in it with them. That a lot of times I think for myself specifically, I try to make those friendships form around understanding. Like I go to them not just to say, walk me through this, let me know, to where I know when and where to call on you. A lot of it is I truly want to understand what they do and how it's important so that when I do have changes or things are happening across the organization and we need to apply changes, I already understand a lot of what they're doing to where I can give them or ask them informed questions because I care and I understand what they do on a day-to-day basis. So the good part for me is, again, for that social capital part, is like, yes, you have to be connecting across the business very, very frequently, especially dependent upon how your internal company looks like, what the size is. It can get a little harder the bigger you get. But making sure that you're making friends in those other departments. And also, for me, I say, hey, walk me through your procedures. I'm trying to learn those procedures as if I'm the one doing them to where I can at least do pieces of that within an audit, not always wanted, but we can do it to where when we're there, it's so much easier for us to be like, hey, I'm going to walk you through this piece. And then, hey, Adam, I'm going to tap on you for you to walk through this AWS specific permissions, roles and responsibilities, some separation of duties there to say, hey, pull up AWS. Let's go into the roles. Let's show them some specific thing. But because I've seen it a million times, because I've already walked through it a bunch of times with those stakeholders, and I've created interest and understanding in their department and what they do on a day-to-day basis, it's so much easier to tap on somebody and be like, hey, I need to pull this. Can you go here, here, and here and pull this? Because I've seen it rather than, hey, I just need regurgitate whatever control it is, this, and then they're like, what do you mean? And it shortens that feedback loop a lot.
I
Mm,
guess it's nice too because it really brings in multiple parts of the business to like
Yep.
compliance is everyone's job, and it to some
Mhm.
degree like you can look at it as like, oh, this is hassle, but it's like actually it grounds what you do every day into something bigger and kind of
For
more of
purpose.
this broader organism of
Yep.
compliance and the operation of a business. So it's kind of cool and exciting in that way, how it all like actually rolls up to some, kind of bigger
Bigger
purpose.
picture. I
Yeah.
think it's hard. I love it. I think in that way very, very frequently. I think it's hard once you're in the thick of it to be like, oh, this has a reason. There is a purpose to this of like they don't get to see how helpful it can be from a sales cycle perspective and how helpful or necessary it is for some of our customers to see and understand to be able to trust us because we've gone through that rigor, because we've gone through that process. They don't get to see it a lot of times, so like our IT friends or our engineering friends, they don't get to see the flip side of that coin very often. And I think that's something that, especially my department, should do a better job about socializing of like, hey, we're winning these deals or we're strategically doing well in these conversations because of the hard work that you're doing on these processes on a day-to-day basis and showing how that translates because it's helping everybody win by having these, but a lot of that back end stuff is to get us to the point where we can be in those conversations. Then I think that translation point gets lost a lot of the time because customer trust is just, oh yeah, it's out there. Sales gets to run with it, but we don't necessarily connect all the way across the board from where it started, what we had to do, what the output was, and then what they got to do with that output.
Now
Yeah.
I know I want to go get you some of that data, like website. How many people actually access our trust center?
Oh, I have that data. It's
Yeah.
awesome. That data is just every time I look at it, I'm like, yeah, keep asking us questions. Like keep pulling those reports. Like seeing how often our SOC 2 report gets pulled versus how much our PCI rock, which is our report and compliance, how much that gets pulled. The metric difference is insane, but it just is really telling towards what is most helpful for a lot of our customers and does it make sense to be going after other things that people are asking for because of that trust center.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about like the questions that I throw into FAQs or things like that. It
Oh
it
yeah.
all comes back to like building that trust. And the more you can just be like, instead of trust us, here's the answer to our question. Actually,
Literally.
here's a
Don't just take my
attestation.
word. Here you
Right.
go. Here's a piece of information that actually shows that I mean what I say and I
Yeah.
say what I mean.
I
You know,
love that.
all of this is like such an interesting foundation too. Like we were just at RSA last week, RSAC out in San Francisco, and everything is AI, and you just that's all you hear. And
Mhm.
there's some really cool things that people are talking about doing, but I think one of the things that this kind of tells me is that like people when they're looking at technology should
Yeah.
look past the AI and like do they have a cast? Do they have a department that's like
Yeah.
really shoring up the foundation of data that exists that this AI is presumably operating on?
Mhm.
And are all of those things in place that are needed to make that, as secure as it needs to be, as, all of the attestations that you're talking about, like it just kind of connecting those dots of like the promise of AI must rely on this foundation of data that is well guarded by compliance.
Can we trust them? Has risk reduction happened? Are they doing what they say they're doing? Do they care about our data and want to truly protect that? And what are they actually doing that shows that they're actually doing that?
Yeah.
What you're doing is making everybody watch videos about how. Just saying. Just
Yeah.
saying one
They're
of
like,
the
this
things
lady's
you're
excited about
doing.
GRC, and I'm not honestly sure why,
I'm
but that's
like,
fine.
Love it. Well, Cass, this has been delightful as always. If you are trying to avoid being on the podcast more, you're doing a bad job of it because you're always so
I always want to
good.
chit chat with you guys, no matter what it's on.
Thank you again for this time today. Really fun conversation. Zoe, thank you as always. And we'll see you all on the next episode of Masters of Data. Thanks, everyone.